Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about this. It's the 9Barista Espresso machine. It's like a stovetop mocha pot that actually makes espresso. This was created by a guy called William Playford. His background is a jet engineer, that's his bona fides. It's beautiful and it's very clever. It has three pieces. The top one, probably the least interesting, we'll come back to that in a second. The main body is two parts, one of which is a water chamber at the bottom. Initially, you might think this looks just like the base of a mocha pot. There's a pressure release valve, necessary and safe, but it's more than that. It's actually two water chambers, and this is the first point at which this thing is pretty clever. Now, you'd fill this with about 110 to 120 mils of water, cold water as recommended by the manufacturer, and while I like to use boiled water in a mocha pot, I've done as they've asked, in this case here. But all of the clever things are here in this part, in the middle. Now you'll see that this little piece has two little red gaskets here, and they are what divide the two chambers. So when you screw it in, there is a chamber below this gasket and one above this gasket. The bottom chamber is where water is boiled and it's trapped until it reaches very high pressures, until it reaches 9 bars of pressure. I think that's about 179 degrees Celsius, but I could be wrong. The upper chamber here is quite clever. It's going to act as a cooling bath. This is going to be confusing when I tell you that the water in that cooling bath is going to be 100 degrees Celsius, or it's going to be at whatever temperature water boils wherever you are. Here I'm at sea level, so it's 100 degrees Celsius. The way this thing works is that you have this water trapped, boiling away madly in the bottom section. When it reaches 9 bars of pressure, it opens a spring-released valve inside this unit, allowing water to flow into this coil. Now this coil is surrounded, it's jacketed by this boiling water, which is much, much, much cooler than the water going into that tube is. It's kept at 100 degrees Celsius because this chamber is only at atmospheric pressure. There's a little chimney here on the side that allows water to sort of boil, thus keeping it at a fixed temperature. In flowing through this coil, it should drop from 179 down to about 100 degrees Celsius, still a little bit hot, before entering the final section of this part of the body, which is an additional heat sink. That's what these fins are for. Therefore, it should exit the shower screen, effectively, at about 93, 94 degrees Celsius. That's the theory. What you have on top is basically an upside-down portafilter. I mean, it's exactly a portafilter. There's a basket here, comes out, there's a little handle, it's a portafilter. But by having it upside down, the pressure comes from underneath, it's dispersed through a little dispersion block that sits on top of the coffee, I'll show you that in a minute, and then flows into this little collection chamber where you can pour it out and drink your espresso at the end of it. It's ingenious, to be honest. It's a fascinating solution to the problem of how do I generate 9 bars of pressure on a stovetop. We'll brew some coffee, taste it, talk about it, and then afterwards I'll give you my overall thoughts about how this works, and ultimately, who is this for? So I have everything amongst this chaotic collection of things in which I need to make espresso with the 9Barista. Now when you buy it, it comes with this. It's an adapter disc for gas or induction. So this on its own does not work on an induction hob. So I've got a small little gas burner here, and it works for these as well, just to disperse the heat a bit more evenly and make it so it fits safely on top of any sized ring. It does also come with a very cute little tamper, which is nice and obviously necessary. So let's make some coffee. In here I have my cold filtered delicious water, a little bit below the suggested level for reasons we'll talk about in a second. Now when you put this together, you'll see this become submerged and the water begin to cover this section of the chamber. If you overfill, you will make a mess. And with anything where you're going to be generating high pressures, you want to make sure your gaskets are properly seated so this is nice and tight. Don't make it impossible to undo later. You won't thank yourself for that, but make sure it's tight. So now to prep the basket. Now they recommend 20 grams of coffee. That's probably a pretty good catch-all dose, but for me, I certainly preferred slightly lower doses. So I'm kind of in that 18.5, 19 range with this. I think it's because the coffee I'm using is perhaps a touch lighter and therefore a little bit harder to extract. And as we know from the video on starting dose for espresso dialing in, which is up here if you want to watch that, then if you have a lighter roast, then it helps sometimes to use a lower dose. And temp. The one last piece to go on is the sort of dispersion screen that does two jobs. It disperses water and also keeps the coffee in when you turn it upside down. Both fairly important things. Lock in the group head, and we're ready to make some coffee. Now, the one challenge of this unit, I suppose, is that the dialing in process, if you're trying to brew coffee after coffee after coffee after coffee, is pretty slow, actually. Their ideal brew time from going on from cold is 6 minutes, and you kind of want to hit that brew time. So brewing back to back, certainly when you get the unit for the first time, it's going to take a little while to really kind of dial in your process. And that 6 minute time is kind of important, actually. If you miss it, then a couple of bad things can happen. You can either potentially evaporate all of the water in your upper chamber because it will boil. You could boil it so dry that you end up insufficiently cooling your brewing water and having an aggressive steamy brew. I've certainly done that when trying to find the kind of right heat setting for this particular unit. You kind of want to work out and tweak and aim for a 6 minute brew by testing. You're going to make some bad coffee when you get this. You're unlikely to nail it out of the gate. If you did, well done you. You're aiming for 6 minutes. And the trouble with that, in some ways, as a part of the dialing in process, is that you don't know if it's gone wrong until you get to 6 minutes and nothing's happened, right? If you're heating it too slowly, at 6 minutes, you find out things have gone wrong. That's a bit frustrating for me. The dialing in process has definitely been a little bit too slow and sort of drawn out. And then you've got to cool it down, take it to pieces, refill it. It's not a back-to-back unit, and certainly it's not going to be great at producing lots of coffee for lots of different people quite quickly. This is something that you buy for you. So now we're starting to hear some boiling, and that boiling is the upper chamber. This is where I've had a couple of issues, and it's an issue that they know about, and we'll talk a little bit about the fix afterwards, but that bubbling can be a little bit too angry, a little bit too intense. It coincides typically with the unit really coming up to pressure and coffee happening, as long as you've got the heat right. And at this point, you kind of want to pay attention to what's going on. You can have some issues with water spitting out of the chamber, which is obviously bad, but coffee is now happening, and it looks very good. I have made some espresso. Oh yeah. So let's taste it in a second. I'm just going to put this in the sink, cool it down a little bit. So how is it? Did it make delicious coffee? Well, it's pulled a decent sized double. I had some nice crema. It's pretty good. It tastes like the coffee that went in. Texture's nice. You don't need to stir the shot because it's been stirred by that kind of pouring action out of the 9Barista. It would certainly work well as the base of a milk drink if that's what you were interested in doing, though obviously it has no method for heating milk. As a straight shot though, pretty good. I might drop the dose, tweak the grind a touch finer. It's on the border of under extracted, but that's on me and not on the machine, so to speak. Ultimately, it makes good tasting coffee. It's certainly capable of producing the temperature and the pressure that you would want. It doesn't taste like a super hot shot. You know what I mean? When brew temperatures have gone a little bit too high, it doesn't have that particular kind of harsh bitterness that you get sometimes. Pressure-wise, it's hard to really know. The physics, all that kind of stuff behind it certainly makes sense, but I have no way of measuring that effectively. So there's a bit of trust there. What I will say is that it needs a slightly coarser grind than a traditional espresso machine for the same kind of dose to flow normally, which suggests possibly a slightly lower pressure. It might be that the shot starts at 9 bars, but obviously as pressure is released from the system, that pressure may decline towards the end of the shot. In order for this to appeal to you, I think what you need is very limited space, is a good grinder for sure, and no interest in milk drinks. It's £295, which is expensive. You can see where your money is going in terms of design and build. It's a small company. I think that's probably a fair price to achieve what they've achieved here, but it's still more expensive than some traditional kind of lever machines, something like the Flare, where you're going to be adding the hot water and the pressure yourself. This is at least doing some of those things for you and doing it in a controlled, repeatable way. If you have a mocha pot that you wished made espresso, this is for you. But just you. Again, it's not good at making multiple coffees for multiple people, and it doesn't work particularly quickly. But if you wish you could put on a mocha pot in the morning, have a genuinely delicious espresso at the end of it, this may be something for you to consider. That doesn't mean I'm not without some small criticisms of it. It's a very well machined thing. It seems to be done within very tight tolerances, though I will say that locking in the portafilter, there's just a little bit too much play here as you lock it in. I wish it was a little bit more tightly machined from that perspective. I've never had an issue with a seal not forming properly. It just doesn't feel in line with the rest of the machine as a whole. It's just a funny little detail like that. I do need to talk about the issue with water exiting the chimney towards the end of a brew or towards the beginning of espresso flowing. They've addressed this in a blog post. If you're getting very large bubbles of water, it's because you potentially lack nucleation points. Inside here, where the water's boiling in that secondary chamber, everything's too smooth. They discovered quite recently that if you just sand a little bit just to rough up some of the sort of surfaces in there, that issue goes away, which I think is kind of interesting. And also they've had people just use a little bit less than 120 ml inside the machine, more like 110, and had no issues either. As you saw, I had a little tiny issue, but not a significant one. I haven't done any roughing up inside of here. I think they're going to change that for future production runs. This is number 278, so it's still pretty early there, but I'm glad they addressed an issue and I'm glad they've worked out the problem and got a fix for it, even if it is something as simple as a piece of sandpaper. The last criticism or thing to note is that you don't have a ton of control here. It's going to do what it's going to do. You're not going to be able to manipulate pressure or temperature in any way. And if you like coffees that brew with ideal temperatures that are outside of the kind of range it produces, there's not much you'll be able to do. I guess you could probably try something inadvisable, like dosing a little cold water in to sort of drop the temperature of the heat jacket just before it starts brewing. But the timing on that seems like a chaotic thing, and I'm certainly not recommending that. I'm just sort of thinking out loud. As fixed as it is, it at least does the things that it's supposed to do. It produces consistent temperature and pressure, and it does it in an ingenious, clever, and frankly, beautiful way. The details on this are nice, the wood handles are nice, it feels solid, it feels well built. It does have a couple of gaskets in there, and to be honest, I did break one of them. I'm not sure how. It's not shocking. I can perhaps be a little bit rough with equipment at times. I'm not like Casey Neistat with cameras, but you know, I might be a little bit rough sometimes. Just be aware that there are parts that will wear over time. So just 2 gaskets inside the machine. They are what you will replace potentially longer term. Overall, I'm pretty impressed. I think it's clever. I think it's beautiful. I think it makes good tasting coffee. I don't think it's for everybody, but if you've ordered one of these because it fit the way you want to make coffee, if it fits your life, I think you'll have a good time. No, I don't get to keep this. This is going to go to one of my Patreon backers. I'm very grateful that I have a Patreon that gives me a budget to go and buy these things, and so I can make independent, honest reviews of them and let you know what I think. But, you know, I'm a little bit sad to let go of it. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it would be a fun thing to show other people. It would be a fun way to get people excited about coffee. Seeing the kind of upside down naked portafilter thing, seeing the espresso fill from the bottom is unusual. It's interesting. It's beautiful again. Overall, it's expensive, it's a little bit niche, but it does what it set out to do. But now I want to hear from you. There's probably at least 300 of these in the world if this is number 278. So how are you getting on with it? What kind of experience have you had? How does the coffee taste? Are you happy with your purchase? Are you waiting for one of these? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.